Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. Right, welcome everyone to the May 2nd Common Council meeting of St. John. I will start by reading a land acknowledgement. The land on which the city of St. John, or Manawaganist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq, and the Pescataway, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause and reflect. Okay, City Clerk, next item, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next, we have the National Anthem.
Please stand. I'll just mention that that is the St. John High Choir, led by Trish Gallagher, performing for the 2021 graduation ceremony. So thank you to that. It's beautiful. Next item, City Clerk.
Yes, Your Worship. Next item on the agenda is 2.1, the council minutes from the meeting of April the 19th, 2022.
I'll take a motion for the minutes. I have Councillor Hickey and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item is item 3, approval of the agenda. We do have some additions from Committee of the Whole. Those would be item 17.1, City Market Lease Renewal for Butcher's Daughter. 17.2, City Market Lease Renewal for Howard's Convenience. And 17.3, would be professional service agreement for strategic governance training.
All right, I'll take a motion for acceptance of the agenda with the additions. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest.
Councillor Killen.
17.1 and 17.2.
Thank you. Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 to 5.20.
Take a seconder on that. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. On the question. Okay, I've got a few lights on. I have the deputy. You have your light on, deputy?
Yeah, but I don't think I'm first, am I? Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask about 5.18, the harbor slip.
5.18.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to ask your question, I have Mr. Commissioner McGovern is here to address that.
Okay. So my question is, how many companies responded to the RFP for the glazed structures?
Through you, Your Worship, there were two proponents who submitted for the glazed structures. One was Open Air Inc. out of Oakville, Ontario, and then Atlantic Window from St. John.
I see. So, okay, because I didn't recognize Open Air Incorporated. So they're from Ontario. So who was the design for this and everything in the RFP, or did they design their own, or how does that work?
Yeah, there was certain specifications put out, and so we received proposals back and looking at, if would meet our specs. And so we did a RFP review. And before you this evening is the recommendation for the company that provides the glazed structures that meet with the most competitive price.
Okay, I was just asking because that's a lot of money for those patios. I just wanted to make sure that, everybody had a shot at it. Thank you.
Councillor Radwan, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just have a couple of quick comments on 5.4 Inspire Festival. This is really exciting to see that there's going to be, once approved, a mural for the Memorial Cup. And I just wanted to make mention that I do sit on the Arts Board with Councillor Killen, and Kate Wilcott has been doing an absolutely incredible job. It's really exciting to see city staff so passionate and dedicated, and she's absolutely been incredible. And I just wanted to make mention 5.6 is actually a public hearing for Wild Fox Drive and Manawaganist Road if anybody wants to look at it. And I also wanted to thank staff on 5.7 of the piece on systemic racism. I look forward to being a part of all of the policy changes and changes that would end up happening, just to and any enhancements, actually, I guess it would be, so that we're fighting against systemic racism. And it's just really exciting to see all of the pieces coming together for Market Slip. Anyway, that's everything, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. No questions, Your Worship. Just wanted to point out that in 5, 15, 16, 17, and 18, all those requests for proposals are mean tenders, means work at Market Slip moving forward, and it's just very exciting. As much as the Chair of Finance doesn't like spending money, I like spending this money.
Exactly. Thank you. For the public, we've got 20 items on the consent agenda tonight. There's some really interesting reading there. You've heard a few of the highlights, so I would recommend, if you have time, go in and take a look at the kit. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Yes, Your Worship. Next, we have item 6, members' comments.
Members' comments. So just a reminder to everyone that it's the 2-minute speed round. get your lights on while I'm setting my timer here. Let's see, who's up first? Councillor Ogden.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank this weekend. I know in all the wards there was a lot of cleaning going on, but the UNB St. John Seawolves had a cleanup, Trojans rugby team. People in Milledgeville, I think, had 150 people out. But there's just been a ton of cleanups, and one change has got one planned coming up in the Old North End, and I just think it speaks volumes to the great spirit of St. John. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will go as slow as possible in the speed round. But lots to talk about. Last week, actually, Nancy Tissington and I, Executive Director of Uptown St. John, went over to, I won't say what Uptown High School because I went to the other one, but it's not St. John High, and presented to a really great class, entrepreneurship class, about what's happening at the Funded Key and about all of the excitement in Uptown. And I said, geez, it must be difficult to be a councillor around this table and not represent Ward 3 because that's where it's happening. It's lots of exciting stuff. I'm just joking. There's lots happening around the city. But with the Container Village opening up, the development at Funded Key, where there will be temporary patios this summer in place. Fort Latour opens June 1st. Lots of exciting stuff happening in the Uptown, and in particular setting us up, gearing us up for a really exciting summer. And of course, Mother's Day is over the weekend, so happy birthday, or happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I know, thankfully, I lose the responsibility this year because my mother is away traveling, so gets her own enjoyment of being away, so I don't have to pamper her or anything. But I do have a grandmother, of course, who will get it, and has been a mother for 65 years, which I think is pretty good. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor. What are you suggesting? Your mother is getting a reward, getting away from you for Mother's Day? Is that what that was? I wasn't sure.
I figured that'd be a reward.
Councillor Killen.
Your Worship. Okay, so I want to give a shout out to Councillor Harris for organizing a really incredible community build that I spent 2 or 3 days at First Steps painting new rooms for the mothers. So this, quite historic. I think it's an old convent, actually. So it was quite something to go in there and actually see the space and see what all the educational purposes, where they eat together, just to see it. It was incredible, and it was really awesome to do that. So great job. Also, congratulations to Alice Hashmer, who just opened, I think it would be St. John's potentially first, two-spirit LGBTQIA plus community space directly targeted for youth. It's right on Germain Street, and they're going to be providing a safe space as well as like food and programming, and they're working with a lot of the fellow queer organizations in St. John. So it's really incredible to see this emerge as a community effort for these folks. And also, happy birthday to David Hickey and myself, which is tomorrow. We have the same birthday. Yeah, he's a lot younger than me, but I'm a lot better looking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I have Councillor Sullivan up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. This past week, I had the honor of representing council at the swearing-in of 2 new police officers at the start of this week. One repatriated St. Johnner, and a new St. Johnner and his family have joined our St. John Police Force, so welcome to them. I also had the honor of representing council at the inaugural New Brunswick Curling Hall of Fame reception this past Saturday night. And, we sometimes miss in little humble New Brunswick that we have produced world champions, and honored as inaugural inductees into New Brunswick Hall of Fame was the Heidi Hanlon, World Championship curling team from Thistle St. Andrews, along with Ron Hutton, who is a past president of the Canadian Curling Association, plus the Jim Sullivan Rink, who was a world junior champion that included St. Johnner cousin Charlie Sullivan, along with Uncle David Sullivan, who, while now he hails from Fredericton, grew up on Orange Street in the South End. Curling is certainly a sport that's alive and well in our province, in our city, and it was nice that the Curl New Brunswick chose St. John to have their first Hall of Fame. Many world and national champions coming out of our city. And finally, just a reminder, wear your mask, sneeze into your elbows, wash your hands, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just along the same lines as Councillor Ogden, there's a lot of cleanups going on this spring, and Crescent Valley has yet determined a date, but that'll probably be coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. One change is on May the 14th from 10 to 12. And yeah, the Milledgeville area had one on the weekend, and I couldn't make that one, but I guess it was about 100, 150 people there. So I'd like to see the neighborhoods out. They do a great job. It's transformational for the city after a long winter. So thank you, everybody, all those hardworking volunteers. You do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Some of you may have, this is a really good news story, and it's just kind of breaking now, so I wasn't going to say anything tonight at members' comments because I often speak too much, but this is one I think that everybody wants to hear about. So many would have followed some of the story around a couple of tenants in the city who had issues with their housing, and there was mold and issues. And we rallied. There was a number of us that really took it around council. I know Councillor Ogden was making calls. This would be for residents Shauna and Amber Moore and their apartment. And I know that Deputy Chief Carr was over there with his team just doing an inspection for safety reasons. We had Pamela Bentley that was there and did some work. And we finally just got word that and this doesn't happen very often. We don't have a lot of stories like this. But the property management company is going to step up, provide them 2 months notice, 2 months rent-free to help the families get out and find housing. So they're just overwhelmed. They're just thanking everybody. And I think it's a good news story about the community rallying. And now we have a really good example of landlords in the city just taking that extra step to support our residents. So anyway, that's my only comment. Thank you, Your
Thanks,
Worship.
Councillor, for that good news story. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's 21 events. Sorry about that. 21 events and only 13 weeks of summer, so St. John is chock full of calendar events. So when our events are outpacing the number of weeks in the summer to host them, that's certainly a good problem to have. So you can check out our City of St. John webpage, and all the event postings are available there. And certainly congratulations to Ray Gracewood and his team for the Container Village that's up and going. It's looking bright, spectacular. There's going to be all kinds of cool shops there, and another destination in Uptown St. John to attend to when you're enjoying the sights and sounds in Uptown St. John. And one other thing I know, Her Worship welcomed in the first cruise ship of the season, so more to go. So congratulations on I guess a bit of that ribbon cutting. It's been a while since they've been in port, so it's good to see them back in town, and we can extend our Port City welcome. So lots of good things happening. And the only other thing I'll mention, I can't let this moment go without mentioning kind of a west side thing that's going to unite Ward 1 with the Uptown. As Councillor Hickey said, I guess all good things are happening, and the Port City Beer Run is going to end in Uptown St. John in May. So you can check that out by visiting Moosehead, who's the sponsor for that one. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 minutes is not enough, but I do want to make mention, first of all, Happy Mother's Day to everybody. And a special Happy Mother's Day to Councillor Killen and Mayor Reardon, who are two great moms. I'd also, today is actually Eid. So Muslims have stopped fasting and now they're feasting. So the thing to say is Eid Mubarak. And if you can't say that, you can say Happy Eid. Unfortunately, and I'm happy to spend my Eid with this lovely table, but I do, and actually the next 2 days is also considered Eid as well. Unfortunately, not everybody has enjoyed their Ramadan. So I just want to make mention of the attack the terrorist attack that happened at the Al-Qaza Mosque last Friday. So when the patrons went in and they were praying, there was a full-blown attack. I have personally witnessed videos of Israeli police in uniform beating people with batons, aggressively handling women outside the mosque. It was extremely disturbing. I just want to make a point that I absolutely never condone violence on either side of the border, for sure. So there was 300 Palestinians injured, many taken to hospital, 12 Israelis died, 2 Ukrainians. And then the other part that was extremely disturbing was that the Palestinian Christians were trying to practice their Holy Fire Saturday, and they were also attacked. Very, very disturbing to watch this. As somebody who strongly believes in watching the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where physiology is number 1, food, water, warmth, rest, and then safety and security is the next most important thing to survive. Just like you to take a second to think, put yourself in a Palestinian's shoes. When a country is able to shut the lights off so that you don't have power, to be able to feed your children. They're able to shut your water off so that you can't give water to your children. And the world allows the Palestinians to go even 4 generations back without a passport to travel. And then just imagine that you have an attack on the church a week before your Christmas. That just kind of gives you a little bit of insight. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will wrap it up and just say Happy Mother's Day. It's a week from Sunday to all the mothers out there. You know, having a baby, that's the easy part. It only takes 9 months, you've got a baby. But it's all those next years. That's the tricky part. And you say to yourself when they're little, well, when they get older, I won't worry so much about them. But when they get older, for anybody here who has survived raising teenagers, it's more worrisome because a lot of things are out of your control then. So anyways, it's a wonderful journey. And as a friend of mine loves to say, your kids will bend you and they'll twist you and they'll try to break you. But at the end of the day, you're a better person for it. And I do believe that. So happy Mother's Day and happy birthday, Councillor Hickey, Councillor Killen. And I also have a May baby. Lydia Margaret is going to be 31, Lydia, in May as well. So it's a popular month. Anyways, thank you. Now, I'm wondering if we could do 15.3 because we've got Stephen Tobias up there, and it would just be, we're just going to refer that over to the Growth Committee. We've got so can you call that one up for us?
Yes, so Your Worship, item 15.3 on your agenda is a submission from the St. John Theatre Company, and it's a request for support, and there's a staff recommendation to refer this item to the Growth Committee.
So I've got a mover, Councillor Killen and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. You're going to Growth. Thank you. All right, next item.
Next item, Your Worship, is the public hearing. So that has been scheduled for 6:30 tonight. It is now 6:30, and so this particular item appears as 9.1 on your agenda, and it's for a proposed Section 59 amendment for 117 Carlton Street.
Okay. I just have to call up my kit here. Okay, Commissioner Hamilton, this is going over to you for introduction, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Before Council for public hearing this evening is a proposed amendment to a Section 59 condition for subject property at 117 Carlton Street. The applicant, Jeremy Miller, is pursuing a application to enable the establishment of an information technology business in combination with residential use in an existing building on the property. The application has been considered by the Planning Advisory Committee and staff, and before you are recommendations to approve the application. With that as an introduction, I will turn things over to Peter Johnson with our department for a brief staff presentation. And I would note, as this is the first time that Mr. Johnson has appeared before Council by way of introduction, he has joined our department within the past several months as a contract planner supporting our team. So with that, I will turn things back over to Mr. Johnson.
Welcome, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Common Council. This application deals with the Section 59 amendment and the rescinding of conditions imposed on the site at 117 Carleton Street, restricting its use to a law office. The proponent, the proponent is proposing to use the building as an IT office and co-working space, which will make way for temporary office use to similar user groups at the ground floor, while himself will live in the residential portion of the property located within the upper floors. The location of the site is in proximity to Carleton and Covert intersection, integrated into the city's pedestrian network and nearby transit connections at King Square. And for context, you can see the general topography of Carleton and Coburg streets. The building is a turn-of-the-century structure of similar height and scale to the adjacent properties such as UNB's Beaverbrook House. And again, Coburg Street showing the similar topography. The site is designated medium to high density residential in the municipal plan and conforms to the direction established in the Municipal and Central Peninsula Plan as a mixed-use building, offering both residential and commercial uses. And the site is considered within the Waterloo Village, specifically the Upper Waterloo Village in the secondary plan. The property is zoned as uptown commercial, and as you can see, similarly zoned properties proliferate the surrounding area. And the Section 59 conditions limiting the use of the building were established as part of a 2008 municipal plan amendment and rezoning, which changed the use from original residential use to commercial. This was to allow for the operation of the law office. And at the time, parking and access to the parking area were raised as concerns. However, since the implementation of the secondary plan, the site is now within the parking exemption area. And parking on Coburg Street nearby would be, is now metered. So no letters have been received, and applicant Jeremy Miller appeared before the Planning Advisory Committee. He agreed with staff's recommendation. The application was circulated to other internal city departments, and no concerns were raised. So staff's recommendation is that Common Council, pursuant to provisions of Section 59 of the Community Planning Act, discharge the resolution adopted on March 17th, 2008, imposed on the rezoning of a parcel of land located at 117 Carleton Street. And the Planning Advisory Committee adopted staff's recommendation as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I will open the public hearing. We have no one registered to speak, but I will ask if there is anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against the application? And for the final time, is there anyone here who would like to speak against this application? Okay, I'll ask if there's anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application. Anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application? And for the final time, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application? I think I have, do I have anyone on the screen up there? It's just that my screen changed up there, I don't know. Okay. Oh, okay. We do have. Mr. Miller, you have your hand up there? Oh, you're on?
Yes,
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I support the application. Just wanted to make note that I was present.
Okay, thank you so much. Does any counselors have a question for Mr. Miller? All right, thank you. Okay, so I will close the public hearing, and I'll ask if any counselors have any questions for staff, for Mr. Johnston, the presentation. If not, over to you. Okay, hang on for a second here. Councillor Hickey.
Very quickly, Your Worship, just saying what I always say when stuff happened in Waterloo Village. That's where it's all happening. Gotta move
Thank
to
you.
Waterloo
Thank you,
Village. It's
Councillor.
all happening in Waterloo Village.
It's all good. So over to you, City Clerk, for the motions.
Yes, Your Worship. So in this particular case, there's just the one motion that was outlined in the staff report, which is to adopt to rescind the previous Section 39 condition, and it can be found as outlined in the staff report.
Okay, so I need a motion to rescind the original 59s. Oh, sorry, Councillor Killen and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, Your Worship, we have items under consideration of bylaws. Actually, we have proclamations. We skipped over
Right,
those. So
proclamations.
let's go back in order. So the next item would be 7.1 on your agenda. And this is a proclamation for Emergency Preparedness Week.
Thank you. Whereas May 1 to 7, 2022 is Emergency Preparedness Week in Canada, and whereas Emergency Preparedness Week is designed to increase public awareness of the importance of personal and business preparedness to cope with emergencies, and whereas emergency preparedness is a shared responsibility in which every person and business can help reduce risks we face by learning how to better prepare ourselves, our families, and our community. And whereas in times of crisis, the City of St. John, its citizens and businesses, staff, and the St. John Emergency Management Organization have collectively demonstrated their commitment to provide for the safety, health, and welfare of citizens, the protection of property and the environment, and the ability to respond to emergencies in a highly professional and safe manner. And whereas an informed, prepared, and cooperative public is vital to effective emergency preparedness planning and emergency response. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node-Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim May 1 to 7, 2022 as Emergency Preparedness Week in the City of St. John. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is another proclamation, item 7.2. It's for World Press Freedom Day.
Whereas World Press Freedom Day was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in December of 1993 following the recommendation of UNESCO's General Conference, and whereas a healthy, professional news media is essential for the proper functioning of civil society and democracy at the local, regional, federal, and international levels, and whereas May 3rd acts as a reminder to governments of the need to respect their commitment to press freedom, and a day of reflection among media professionals about issues of press freedom and professional ethics. And whereas it's whereas it's an opportunity to celebrate the fundamental principles of press freedom, to assess the state of press freedom throughout the world, to defend the media from attacks on their independence, and to pay tribute to journalists who have lost their lives in the line of duty. And whereas the City of St. John is among at least 29 municipalities, home to 13 million people in 9 provinces across Canada, that have passed motions during the past 2 years voicing support for journalism in aid of democracy. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node-Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim May 3rd, 2022 as World Press Freedom Day in the City of St. John. Next item, City Clerk.
And Your Worship, the final proclamation is 7.3, and it's for National Police Week.
Whereas the Government of Canada recognizes the week of May 8th till the 14th, 2022 as National Police Week, and whereas the St. John Police will be recognized as providing exemplary leadership and service reflective of the public safety needs of the community to enhance the quality of life, and whereas the St. John Police has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement body which increasingly provides a vital public service, and whereas every day our law enforcement officers render dedicated service to our community, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police force, recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. Now therefore I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim the week of May 8th to 14th, 2022 as National Police Week in honor of those whose dedication, professionalism, and significant daily contribution keep our citizens and communities safe. Next item, City Clerk.
Yes, Your Worship. So now we're on to item 10.1 on the agenda under considerations of bylaws, and it's a proposed municipal plan amendment for 1461 Manawaganist Road, and it's a public presentation.
Commissioner Hamilton, over to you for this.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, before you this evening is a public presentation of a municipal plan amendment for a property at 1461 Manawaganist Road on the city's west side. For council's information, public presentation is a procedural requirement under the Provincial Community Planning Act for municipal plan amendment applications. And what it means is that it commences a 30-day public review period during which members of the public can provide written submissions on the application as a very early step in the process. And any submissions, I would add, would come back to council following the close of the 30-day public review period for consideration before moving forward in the process. And with that as an introduction, I will now read into the public record a copy of the public notice that commences the 30-day public review period. And you can see on screen the location of the subject property we're speaking of. Public notice is hereby given that the Common Council of the City of St. John intends to consider an amendment to the municipal development plan that would redesignate on Schedule A of the municipal development plan land having an approximate area of 0.25 hectares located at 1461 Manawaganist Road, also identified as PID 003 97539 from Regional Retail Center to Stable Area, as shown on screen, and redesignate on Schedule B of the Municipal Development Plan land having an approximate area of 0.25 hectares located at 1461 Manawaganist Road, also identified as PID 00397539 from Regional Retail Center to Stable Residential, as shown on screen. And the reason for the change is to permit a residential development within an existing building on the property. Written objections to the proposed amendment may be made to council by June 1st, and inquiries may be made to the Office of the Common Clerk or Growth and Community Services in City Hall between 8:30 and 4:30. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Commissioner, and no motion is required for this. So next item, City Clerk.
Next on the agenda is item 10.2. This is a staff report with attached bylaw entitled Revised Code of Conduct.
Thank you, and I'm passing this over to General Counsel, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. Before you this evening for first and second reading is a revised Code of Conduct bylaw, which is intended to repeal the 2019 version of the existing bylaw. You'll recall that the Local Governance Act mandates that local governments make bylaws or a bylaw establishing the code of conduct for the members of its council, and that regulations under that piece of legislation prescribe what is to be contained in such a bylaw. In 2019, pursuant to its obligations under the Act, this council adopted a code of conduct bylaw. The revised bylaw before you this evening has been enhanced with a detailed and more robust administrative process and enforcement procedure that will ensure an effective and efficient management of code of conduct complaints. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, you will recall you received all this about 2 weeks ago. We did a receive and file, gave you some time to think about it. So if anyone has any questions for General Counsel. Councillor Radwan, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I actually just have a comment. I just, first of all, I think this is fantastic. So basically speaking about, instead of going through it all, behaviors and values so that there wouldn't be any bullying, respect, transparency, accountability, integrity, leadership, public interest, confidentiality, responsibility, all wonderful things. It has my full support. One thing I'd love to see our council do in the future is for us to have guiding principles so that we are constantly keeping those in mind to make fair and ethical decisions. I know that we're all trying to do that anyway, but always great to have guiding principles. Most boards do. The other thing that I would like to mention is that I think that this sort of policy could also be put in place for staff, and especially when it does come to social media. Unfortunately, the last 2 terms, I saw some atrocious things online, and I'd love to see that put in place in the future. With that said, I must say that staff have been absolutely fantastic with me, and I truly appreciate all their efforts.
Okay, City Manager.
Your worship, through you to the councillor, just on our last comment, it's part of Work Plan 2022, the staff still have an obligation to return to Common Council with a social media policy for employees. And if this code of conduct passes, then it will also apply to members of council. That social media policy has been under development for quite some time. It nears completion and will be before council within approximately the next month or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. On the question? Oh, hang on a second. Do I have a mover? I don't have a mover yet. What is it? Councillor Killen? Okay. And Councillor Harris? On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And Your Worship, in this case, we require the 2 motions,
right.
so that would have been for first reading. So I just have to read out the title of the bylaw, and it's entitled, "A Bylaw Respecting the Code of Conduct for Elected Members of Common Council of the City of St. John." And so now one more motion for second reading by title.
Second reading by title. Councillor Harris and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw respecting the Code of Conduct for elected members of the Common Council of the City of St. John.
Okay. Next item.
And next, Your Worship, is item 10.3 on the agenda, and this is a bylaw respecting the regulation of ride-sharing companies in the City of St. John. This is going for third reading, so it would require 2 motions, a motion in reading in summary, and then by title.
Commissioner Hugenholtz. Councillor Lowe, you got your light on? Oh, yeah. Okay. Commissioner Hugenholtz, we're going over to you first.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. We did hear some good debate and commentary when this was before you for first and second reading. Specifically, there were 2 concerns mentioned. One was the specific insurance requirements, and the second was more concerned about trying to foster a homegrown solution to rideshare here. We did undertake a review of the actual provisions of the bylaw, and no changes are being recommended to the wording here before you this evening. It is unclear at the moment what role staff should play, if any, on those 2 items. I would offer a reminder, however, that this bylaw is just the first step, and we do anticipate that there may be a requirement to make additional amendments to this bylaw in future based on market feedback, and there may be some further work to do on other provisions, insurance in terms of advocacy, perhaps with the province, and also some work to ensure a good regional framework to enable rideshare companies to set up here in our market. Subject to your questions, I will turn it back over to the City Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? So I've got Councillor Lowe up first.
Just a quick answer, like who in the city, like 9293 states that insurance will be dealt with somebody in the city. Who in the city would be dealing with the insurance for rideshare? The taxi inspector?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. This bylaw would be administered by the city's taxi inspector.
The other question, well, it's not a question. Until somebody receives a license as a holder, there'll be no ride share in the city, right, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, City Clerk, what do we, no more questions? Now, what do we require for motions?
Your Worship, so there's two motions, reading and summary, third reading and summary, and then third reading by title.
Okay, a motion for third reading and by summary. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
So this bylaw is entitled Bylaw Respecting the Regulation of Ride-Sharing Companies in the City of St. John, and the summary is that the provincial government made amendments to the Motor Vehicle Act in 2020 to allow for ride-sharing companies to offer services where municipalities have enacted a governing bylaw. In conjunction with the requirements of the Motor Vehicle Act, local bylaws set out requirements for ride-sharing companies, including driver requirements, vehicle requirements, technology platform requirements, and licensing. This bylaw will establish standards to regulate, control, and collect fees for the licensing of ride-sharing companies. And now one more motion for reading, third reading by title only.
Third reading by title. Councillor Norton and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw respecting the regulation of ride-sharing companies in the City of St. John.
Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 10.4 on your agenda, and this is another bylaw amendment. This is a law to amend a bylaw respecting water and sewerage.
Commissioner McGovern, over to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This item is before you this evening to repeal a schedule that lays out the charges for industrial raw water and replacing it with Schedule E. Schedule E has the raw industrial water rates for 2022, and this evening involves third reading of the rates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the Commissioner? City Clerk, over to you for the motions.
Your Worship, so again, third reading by summary and then third reading by title.
Third reading by summary. I need a motion for Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
So this bylaw is entitled A Law to Amend a Bylaw Respecting Water and Sewerage, and this is the current 2022 Water and Sewage Amendment, and new Schedule E was attached to it, which outlines all the industrial rates.
Okay, so I need a motion for third reading by title. Third reading, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Motion, opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend a bylaw respecting water and sewerage.
Thank you. All right, next item, City Clerk.
And so the final bylaw is a bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the City of St. John.
Thank you. I'm handing this one over to General Counsel, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before Council for third reading this evening is an amendment to the bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, and highways in the city that pertains to an 11 square meter portion of street right-of-way known as Shipman Hill. The amendment was requested by the owner of the building at 15 Market Square, with which you're all familiar and is known as City Hall, because the owner is renovating the upper floors in the building and is also planning a major reno to the pedway level known as the shops of City Hall. The owner requested that an 11 square meter portion of the street right-of-way be closed to enable the construction of a wheelchair accessible ramp into the pedway level of the building. The portion of the street in question being closed currently forms part of the accent sidewalk area and does not include any portion of the pedestrian walkway or the traveled portion of the street. I will say that the requirements of the bylaw have all been met and adhered to, and the public hearing was held at the last meeting of Council on April 19th, at which time Council gave first and second reading to the bylaw. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for General Counsel from my councillors? All right, City Clerk, over to you for the motions.
So two motions needed, Your Worship. First one is a third reading in entirety.
Third reading in entirety. Deputy and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
This is entitled a bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the city of St. John. A bylaw of the city of St. John entitled bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the city of St. John enacted on the 11th day of March 2019 is hereby amended by adding thereto Section 6 immediately after Section 5 thereof as follows. Section 6, the city of St. John does hereby stop up and close permanently the following street: Chipman Hill, all that portion of Chipman Hill, a public street in the city of St. John, in the county of St. John, in the province of New Brunswick, comprising 11 square meters, as shown on a plan of survey titled Showing Portion of Chipman Hill, City of St. John County, New Brunswick, prepared by Hughes Surveys and Consultants and dated March 28th, 2022. And now one more motion by title, Your Worship.
Motion for third reading by title. Councillor Hickey, Councillor Killen, on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the city of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next on the agenda, Your Worship, is submissions by council members, and the first item is 11.1, and this is from Councillor Harris, and it's entitled A Discussion on Housing.
Okay, Councillor Harris, I'm going to go over to you. If you want to read your motion, if you get a seconder, then you can expound on it.
Sure, Your Worship. So just to read the motion would state, recognizing the shifting landscape of housing in St. John and across Canada, and recognizing the new provincial and federal initiatives around housing in the past month, I move that council direct the city manager to consider our city's alignment with these new programs, funding opportunities, and initiatives to increase the city of St. John's attractiveness to outside investment around development. We need to do this to build more affordable and market rate housing faster. This includes considerations and recommendations from staff to council around the following policy options, but I want to stress that it's not limited to these policy options, which are suggested by housing experts. Those policies would be providing nonprofit and cooperative housing corporations with right of first refusal around apartment sales, incentivizing higher density developments around rapid transit and active transportation corridors, tax increment financing, expropriation through urban renewal legislation, elimination of parking minimums around rapid transit routes, and inclusionary zoning policies. The timeline for this suite of recommendations to get feedback from staff on these would be 3 to 5 months in order to best prepare this council for Budget 23 and Work Plan 23.
Seconder? Councillor Ogden? Okay. Councillor Harris, you can kick us off if you want to.
Yeah, and so I just want to make sure the spirit of this motion is clear, Your Worship. Housing policy is a topic of discussion, or school of thought, that I think have two extremes. As far as I can tell, there's a spectrum here. On the one end was a belief that the market's going to do everything that we need it to do. We just need to get out of the way. And the best government can do is eliminate as much red tape as possible to allow investors and developers to just build buildings. And on the other end of the landscape, there is one that believes the market looks after one thing, and that is investment, not people. It is my opinion in this discussion that this council needs to have that we need to be far more involved in supporting the development of housing in St. John as a city corporation. We currently are involved in a very minor way around beautification grants and heritage grants, and I don't want to diminish those because those are important, but that's, besides our one-stop development shop, that's as far as we've ventured into it. We do have an affordable housing action plan that is working with stakeholders to engage on some of these ideas, but I do believe that we need to signal the community, our staff, the other developers, that this is a council that is going to go one of those two ways. We're either going to be more involved and we're going to intervene and seek policies that seek to intervene, or we're not. And I think if we do that, I think we give a little more leverage to our affordable housing action planning team to I guess, have the confidence to come back with us with those recommendations, because it is a pretty big spectrum. It is a big landscape. So those are my thoughts, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think what I would like to do, actually, when I read through this, in 9.1 tonight, when we talked about Carlton Street, we talked about the parking exemption we already have in place in the Uptown. It came with the Peninsula plan. So a lot of this stuff that's listed there, I believe is already being done. So I just want to toss it over to the city manager maybe. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Your worship, through you to the council, to the councillor and to all of council, this motion speaks directly, actually, to the Affordable Housing Action Plan and the intent behind the Affordable Housing Action Plan. And the intent behind the Affordable Housing Action Plan is to take a look at all possible activities that this council could undertake to address the affordable housing challenges that exist within the city of St. John. So the councillor has rightfully in this motion identified some areas that ought to be pursued, and he has stressed that it is not just those areas. The Affordable Housing Action Plan at this point in time has completed what I would characterize as part one, which was the needs assessment or the needs analysis, and the details of that was presented at the last Growth Committee meeting. The Affordable Housing Action Plan Working Group is now working on phase 2 of that plan. And phase 2 of that plan is, in fact, what are the actions that this council would undertake moving forward to help address the affordable housing challenges, understanding that we cannot solve this alone. The province has to be involved in a significant way. That work is ongoing. What the councillor mentions in this motion, respectfully, is not new in terms of ideas. And absolutely, all of those ideas will be pursued and more by the Affordable Housing Action Plan Working Group as they move forward. As for the timeline that the councillor has mentioned, 3 to 5 months, the Affordable Housing Plan is due to come back to this council in August of this year, which meets within the timeline that the councillor has articulated within his motion. So if I was to characterize it, this is in line with and on track with Work Plan 2022 and what is being articulated within the intent of the Affordable Housing Action Plan. It provides some specifics that would be looked at should this motion go through, but quite frankly, these items will be looked at in any event. Thank you.
Well, thank you, City Manager. I find that that's helpful. It's good as well because I know that our staff, are very capable and can certainly, bring this to fruition for us. So I just want to make sure. I guess I don't want the public to think that we're not doing a lot of those initiatives, but that they would be all rolled into our Affordable Housing Action Plan. Councillor Killen, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do want to support this because I think what it philosophically does for us as a council is showing our intent, right? Like we have hired the consultants 100%. But what has struck me is, I'm not sure if any of you listened to CBC right after the budget dropped from the federal government. And one thing Christiana Freeland said, our finance minister, that really struck me was that we need to work directly with municipalities. And I felt like that was a very big turning point for, because we often say, okay, well, this is the province's deal, but the province doesn't have a affordable housing entity. Like absolutely, they have social development and they have social development housing, but this part of the spectrum is uniquely for cities to help figure out. And I just think we need to be leaders in that. Councillor Hickey tweeted, there's 1,500 waiting list right now in the province. A significant number here reside in St. John for housing. And as we move people out of the places that they are now into units that, we're building, et cetera, then we have more space for those who are at the lower end of this spectrum. So I just think that this to me is just showing our cards to the community. I really don't see it as an issue, and we're aligning ourselves with the federal government in ways that we haven't done before. So I think we just need to be strong on that, and that's just from the perspective of Mike as chair of growth. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey, you're up next.
Thanks, Your Worship. I support the idea of the motion. It's important that we stay focused on affordable housing. I would argue that the city of St. John is, if it not already is approaching a housing crisis. You see more and more people being pushed out of the market. You see more and more people being unable to afford what's happening in the market. And that's, anecdotally for me, I'm seeing more people on the streets. And I do think we need to take action. These things, I think we are taking action on. I think it's clear that the deliverables from our consultation with the public and our consultation with experts and with housing experts in St. John is what's going to build our affordable housing action plan. If anything, I would say let's put some teeth in this, right? Let's not be let's not have such a wide scope on it, and let's say, you know, I won't toss the motion out there because there's a bunch of people wanting to speak, but a referral motion to growth to say, let's identify those key areas that are going to come out of our affordable housing plan, and then let's send it over to finance to make sure that there's money behind it. Because Councillor Killen's exactly right. There's a pot of money there at the federal government through the Housing Accelerator Fund, about $4.5 billion over 4 years, that is earmarked specifically for municipalities to apply for it. I think it's important that the city steps up and says, let's put some money behind this, and let's make sure that the key growth priorities in affordable housing that we're going to identify, not specifically through this motion, but specifically through the affordable housing plan, let's put some money behind it and actually make things happen. You know, we've got Envision St. John saying that they're going to bring 2,000 people a year to St. John. Where are they going to live? You know, we are screaming for new housing and new space for that. That's why I think we need to take real action, especially, you know, like to Councillor Killen's point, you know, we've got a waiting list in the province of New Brunswick of over 7,400 people. The waiting list in St. John alone is 1,700. It's 2.5% of our population is waiting for housing. We don't have anywhere to put them. That's why I think, you know, I don't know what we'll do with this motion, but I think we need to put some real teeth in it and say, let's put some money behind it and actually make things happen in our next budget, because we have the ability to do that and take advantage of things like federal funding that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I guess I looked at this and I thought this is all real familiar stuff. I mean, I look at tax increment financing. We talked about that a long time ago, and the province is supposed to be looking at that. That's a provincial thing. There's nothing new here to me. And the last growth meeting, we got the update. I mean, I'm all on board with what the councilor's saying, but I don't understand why it's being said when we're doing it. I guess that's the bottom line. You know, it's something that everybody's working towards, and it's summarized here and put into a motion. It's hard not to support a motion that says everything that you're already doing. So, I mean, you know, if you don't support it, then you don't support what's happening. And I very much support what's happening. So, I mean, I don't understand it, but that's all, I guess that's all I can say.
Councillor Ogden?
Speaking to what Councillor Killen and Councillor Hickey, I think there is something new here, and it's timing. In politics, like comedy, timing is very important. The federal government has just announced money to go directly to urban centers. We have a province that we've grown up all our lives hearing that it was a rural province, when it's not a rural province anymore. The province has changed dramatically to become urban and southern. And the two cities that have grown the most are Fredericton and Moncton, and they have mostly newer housing. So you have sort of three provinces here in one. One is an old industrial urban center that has some of the oldest housing stock in North America that needs help. Then you have two cities that have grown dramatically with new housing, which is Fredericton and Moncton. And then you have the rural areas. The province has changed dramatically, yet housing, we have to, as the city, and we're different, we saw that in the white paper, how our concerns were not directly addressed in the white paper because of who we are as a community in this province. So we have a chance now to deal directly with the federal government, and to deal with, you know, we have the highest child poverty rate in the country. And we have an old city that we have lots of land, tons of land. We all hear that we're bigger than Fredericton and Moncton and Quispamsis together. So we have lots of land, we have a need, And now we have a level of government who has the most money, just look at the way Moncton's grown, who has the most money to put in. And I think things have changed, that this is different because of the timing, and that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Redwan.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, thank you, Councillor Harris, for putting this motion forward. I think these conversations, first and foremost, are really important to be having here. I know that staff are working really hard on affordable housing and trying to get the action plan together, but sometimes the public doesn't know. And I think that I don't know everything that's probably happening behind the scenes because we don't work in operations. So it's really important to, I think from a governing perspective and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Harris, but I think the narrative behind this is, we want you to explore as many options as you can. Here's a few of possibilities. There could be more. Maybe you don't want to throw these into the mix because there's a reason not to. I mean, that's up to them, right? So I think that that's kind of the narrative behind this. But I think these conversations are especially important to be having. And I agree with Councillor Ogden. I think that putting these kind of motions forth, as a politician is extremely important to get the messaging out there that this is what we want to do, because there is huge buckets of money to tap into. And so if we're extremely serious, we need to make sure that everybody at all levels of government know that we're serious, and we certainly are. So thank you very much, and you have my full support.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, did you want to go next or did you want to go at the end? Next? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to answer a couple of questions, we're really focused on the affordable housing piece here, but I do want to draw attention to one specific part in here. We need to do this to build more affordable and market rate housing faster. And to Councillor McKenzie's point, Deputy Mayor McKenzie's point is absolutely true. This stuff has been talked about. I know Commissioner Hamilton and I had a great chat, and she explained even things where, things like tax increment financing doesn't lay in our current legislative wheelhouse under the province of New Brunswick. But that's important for us to communicate that to the public. It's important for us to talk about that as a council, to say, if we could, we would love to set this direction. Maybe. And we don't know what the costing of that is, what the potential, we don't know what the business opportunity here is, but we need to explore this extensively, not just in the Affordable Housing Action Plan, but my hope is that we, in a bold way as a council, can go in some of these leading edge policy ideas that places like the city of Edmonton done by dezoning their city and eliminating parking minimums. It's not as if these solutions aren't being practiced elsewhere in the country, but we don't have them here currently. And they aren't common in New Brunswick currently, or even in the Maritimes in some cases. And so getting onto that alignment where we see the federal government going and what they want to do, and trying to provide an opportunity for the province to come alongside the solutions we know that are going to work here because we put in some time. Like, I know Councillor Hickey wants to see more teeth around this, but I think we need to give staff some more time to come back with what are the opportunities, what maybe isn't an opportunity right now, and what would those outcomes look like? Because we don't have that kind of capacity to know that, and we're never going to learn that by looking at what another city's done. We have to have our experts, in-house experts, look at this and say, here's what we have beyond the Affordable Housing Action Plan that we can do, because that will have its own recommendations. But I guess that's it for me. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, I quite appreciate this being on the docket tonight. I'll admit this is not my area of expertise. To see the ideas come through, I think it's an opportunity for a touch point. The city manager certainly has well explained that these things and others are going to form part of the Affordable Housing Action Plan and brought back to council, which I think is the key. I guess as the finance guy going beyond this at this point in time, one of the things this council, actually, let me back up. I think one of the things we have done really well in the last year is we haven't commissioned any reports that we haven't taken action on. We're not putting anything on the shelf. So if our staff is spending time creating a plan, I expect to see it in finance as part of our budget going into the next year to talk about it. We're not going to spend time making a plan that we're not going to action. So I think first of all, we have to trust the plan and trust the process. that it's coming back in time in August to fit in with our budget for 2023. So I think that makes sense. And the other piece, one of the strengths I think our staff has, if they have a plan in hand and there's money out there somewhere, they are fantastic at mining that money and finding it. So I think it's all a good discussion tonight. I think it works well together that we got information feeding into a plan. The plan is going to come back to us and feed into the budget. And I guarantee our staff is already sitting out there Googling, how do I get money out of the other levels of government to help finance the plan? They are that good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden, back to you.
Say to the public is that you've got to help us sell St. John because we are different from Fredericton and Moncton and the rest of the province, and we get lumped in a lot of times. I say it to the staff too, whether we're dealing with DTI and bridges, whether we're dealing with housing, is that a lot of times our story, which is a unique story in St. John, and we have unique challenges, not that we can't overcome them, have to be told in Fredericton, because we are an urban center, but we are a very different urban center than Fredericton and Moncton, and we're certainly different than the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey, back to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just very quickly, I'm wondering if we can get buy-in from perhaps Commissioner Hamilton or the city manager. I'm curious on how this works within the Affordable Housing Action Plan, and it does it take a step beyond it? What's the scope, I guess, for your work plan with this moving forward?
Your Worship, through you to the councillor. So in reading the motion a second time, I think there is an increased requirement here. And I caught it on Councillor Harris's second round where he talked about market rate housing initiatives. That's a very different beast. They're, of course, complementary to affordable housing, but it is a very different beast. So within the Affordable Housing Action Plan, to address your question, I believe that everything that is suggested here will be looked at, and I believe that we will report back to council on the merits of these and a number of other initiatives. And this evening, we've gone through an exercise to highlight the importance of this to the public, and we will now continue with the Affordable Housing Action Plan process. And I do not see anything in this motion, as I interpret it this evening, and as I've discussed with Commissioner Hamilton, that would see us changing our process or our timelines for the Affordable Housing Action Plan. We are on track. This is or will be rolled into it, and we still have every intention of reporting back at the end of August on affordable housing. But to be clear, the entire action plan and the working group is focused on affordable housing. If it is the will of council in this go-round to also look at market rate housing, that's very different and would have a number of additional considerations. And I would ask council for more time to do that, probably into 2023, or something else rather significant on the work plan for this year would have to be lowered in priority.
Okay.
It's still Councillor Hickey's turn.
Yeah, Councillor Hickey.
I was just going to say, Worship, maybe if we can get Councillor Harris's buy-in on that, if we keep market rate in or if we take it out. I'm not sure. It's
Councillor Harris?
Just give a quick comment on that. And maybe I'm wrong about this, city manager, so please correct me again if I'm wrong. When we first saw our Affordable Housing Action Plan presented to, the Growth Committee and what the concept is, where we're starting going, one of the things that was made very clear out of the, I believe it was by Phil Ouellette, was that the Affordable Housing Action Plan recognizes that housing is a continuum, and that within that continuum, there's market rate housing. So, I know I've written this, willing to alter that timeline for market rate, but I would assume our Affordable Housing Action Plan would have something to say about market rate housing, because a lot of the stakeholders we've asked to be in that group are actually market rate builders or developers of some sort. So it is a continuum. They may not say this is exactly what we want to see on market rate, but I know our staff and Commissioner Hamilton will have some of that engagement from our market builders to say, okay, we're going to do this to hit this part of the spectrum, and going forward, this is what we're going to explore in the next. So maybe I'm wrong about that assumption, but
Counselor, if I may, with that description, I think we're relatively well aligned here. Affordable housing action plan is for the continuum of housing from homelessness, transition housing, and affordable housing as defined. Clearly, one of the solutions for affordable housing is to have as much market rate housing as possible. That drives down costs. So that will be considered as part of the plan, but it's not the focus of the actions of the work group. And so long as this motion is not implying that it should be a new focus for the work group, then I think it will be looked at in a certain measure, but the focus will remain on the other categories of affordable housing, which is really transitional housing and by definition, the definition of what affordable housing is. But again, some of the things that you would look at in that domain would also apply to market rate housing, but the focus is not there. And my question is, does your motion imply that there should be a focus there, or is the focus on the affordable housing?
No, this shouldn't, not a focus there.
Thank you.
Just for clarity.
Deputy?
Okay, so I think I'm understanding a little better now after Councillor Radwan and Councillor Ogden. So the idea of this is to give the public, keep it on the public agenda, right? It's a discussion for housing. We know that the city manager and staff are working diligently at all of these things. So why are we directing anybody to do anything? Why don't we just have the discussion and keep it on the only part I have a problem with is directing somebody to do something that they're already doing. And we did this before a couple of weeks ago. And I just think that it's unnecessary. Having the discussion I can buy. I can say, yeah, we should be going after that. We should be going after that money. Absolutely. And I'm sure the staff's going to do that. But directing somebody to do something that they're already doing is where I say, have we stepped over the line here? Are we trying to get somebody to do something? Because some people won't watch this. They'll hear it on the street. Oh, finally, they're going to start looking at affordable housing. They passed a motion last night, not realizing that we've been doing it all along, and we've been doing some really good things. So I get it now. I understand why we're doing it. I just don't understand why we're still going to go ahead and ask somebody to do something or direct somebody to do something that's already being done. I think it makes us look like we don't understand what's going on behind the scenes, and I think we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess we seem to be going around and around in the conversation, a little bit of process improvement. I guess my question is why it wasn't just referred to Growth Committee? I think it could have been a motion that could have been brought there. I mean, we went to a considerable amount of work, council, setting up committees. We did. When I first started out, all motions came to council. Like every single motion came to council. And part of the impetus behind creating a committee structure, public safety, growth, finance, was to send those issues there. That's where they're born. And from there, they go through a bit of a vetting process and they go through a filtering process. So by the time they get to this body, all the contaminants, so to speak, have been removed from them, and you have something that is filtered and pure and true, and the subject matter experts that sit behind me and on the other side of the folks that are directly across from me in the horseshoe have a chance for their input to go ahead and provide a mature motion that comes to this council for consideration, and we don't waste this body's time. But I don't see that as this type of motion. What I see it is exactly what the deputy has said. We're directing the marathoner to run a marathon, and she's already running the race. This is a motion that I would have hoped would have just been moved directly towards growth immediately. Like, great motion, it's awesome. It's all good content. Everybody around here's A-okay with housing. It's bang on. We need more of it. We know we have a crisis. We have an emergency. Let's send it to growth so that those things that need to be added or removed, or those things that are simple redundancies, we can have that conversation so that at the very least, we don't waste Mr. Taylor's time cataloging it, putting it in Laserfiche, translating it, bringing back a report. Folks, this is how we want to spend our time. We're spending it, and it's costing us. I think the finance chair would hear that too. These minutes cost money, but that's where it should be going. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Harris, this is your last go-around.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, look, I can appreciate if a friendly amendment wants to get put on there to refer to Growth Committee, fine, go ahead and make the amendment. But I don't think it's a waste of time to talk about taking philosophical thought leadership as a council in a city that's suffering a housing crisis. You know, to believe that this is a waste of time, or that at 7:30 at night when we've had council meetings go till 9:30 and we're talking about $40,000 on recreation, to believe that taking leadership and demonstrating thought leadership as a council to align ourselves with what our experts are saying at the federal level so that we can get our province to provide the same sort of support to our cities as they do elsewhere, to me, that's not a waste of time. And if that gets us one more inch toward that goal, toward that outcome, it's not a waste of time. Thank you.
Councillor. All right, so everyone's had a go-around. I guess what I will say about it is that when I read it, my only concern was that the public would think we weren't considering a lot of those things. So, you know, our staff is amazing, really. The staff here at the city, I find that having been here for 9 years, that they're usually one step ahead of us all the time. We got a call from Dr. Varma, who is your commissioner on systemic racism, and said, do you think you could send us a letter? Already in the kit. So, you know, I just find staff's been always very intuitive and very forward thinking. So I know that they have all this. I just don't want the public confused that we aren't doing those things. But it is, the discussion's always great. So I guess I've got the motion on the floor. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item. City Clerk.
Your Worship, next we have another submission by a council member from the Deputy Mayor, item 11.2 on your agenda, and it's entitled Municipalities Mobilizing.
Over to you, Deputy, to read your motion and get a seconder.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion is, be it resolved that the city manager of the City of St. John investigate the City of St. John joining municipalities mobilizing and come back with a recommendation.
Seconders, Councillor Hickey. Over to you, Deputy.
The background, whereas urban areas are set to become home to 2/3 of the world's population by 2050, and whereas climate change is being observed and experienced at an increasingly local level, cities find themselves at the front line of the battle against climate change. Bringing together innovators from every sector, they provide an indispensable setting for idea sharing and problem solving. And whereas municipal governments have firsthand understanding of community needs and are capable of greater agility to take swift, concrete measures which affect that ripple well beyond local spheres. And whereas many municipalities across Canada are being proactive and taking bold steps to be part of the ecological transition to create a healthier environment for their citizens. Be it resolved that the city manager of the City of St. John investigate the City of St. John joining municipalities mobilizing and come back with a recommendation.
Okay, so this is a referral then, I would say, based on the fact that you're asking the city manager to come back. You've included a letter from Sister Roma there, and
Yes.
so there's no discussion on a referral motion, so we have the motion is on the floor. So I will, unless somebody wants to debate whether it should go to the city manager or not. All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 12.1 on your agenda, and it's a staff report with respect to demolition of vacant, dilapidated, and dangerous building at 134 Taylor Avenue.
Commissioner Hamilton, over to you, please.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, before you this evening is a recommendation with respect to the demolition of a vacant and dangerous building at 134 Taylor Avenue. And this file is part of the city's efforts to address and remedy public safety hazards and improve the quality of life in St. John's neighborhoods as part of the city's dangerous and vacant buildings program. The program continues to demonstrate strong momentum, and year to date, we have resolved 12 cases, the majority of which have resulted in properties repaired and reoccupied, which is really the outcome we're looking for from a growth perspective. And with that as an introduction, I will now turn things over to Ben Purinton, who oversees our vacant and dangerous buildings program, to provide a brief presentation on behalf of staff on the file.
Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Common Council. Today I will be providing a brief summary of the dangerous and vacant building file you have before you, item 12.1 of the agenda. The building at 134 Taylor Avenue is a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of being vacant or unoccupied, by reason of dilapidation, and by reason of unsoundness of structural strength. There's one building on the premise, a two-story multi-unit building located in the city's north end. The building was recently partially constructed, with construction of the building beginning in September 2020. Prior to construction being completed, a fire event occurred causing severe damage to the building. The building has been broken into multiple times since the fire, prompting staff to take enforcement action. A notice to comply was issued on the building on April 11th, 2022. The owner did not comply within the time frame provided in the notice due to ongoing delays from their insurance company. In recent discussions, the owner stated that they do intend to begin work starting tomorrow, May 3rd, and have a contractor lined up to do so. Staff intend to see that the hazards are fully remediated within a reasonable time frame, and therefore wish to advance the demolition process by receiving approval tonight. This will allow staff to take steps towards demolition immediately if action is not taken by the owner. Staff will advise Common Council if remedial action is taken by the owner and if the city is not proceeding with demolition. To ensure that the hazardous conditions are remedied in a timely manner, staff recommendation for the building is demolition, and the following exterior photos can be found on pages 355 to 362 of the council packet. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you, Ben. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Ben. City Manager, I know we don't have this bylaw, but in the City of Victoria, they have a bylaw about deconstruction. There's a lot of very expensive materials there, new windows. I know where you know where I'm going with this. Do we have anything we can put in place here to offer the community an opportunity or the contractor to pull out? Like there's brand new windows in there that, you know, are probably easily removed, and cost of building materials are quite high. Do we have anything in place, or do we have to literally bulldoze this and send it to the dump?
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, very quickly, because it really is out of scope for this particular building for tonight, but short answer is no. This is private property. It is a privately owned building, and the legislation would not cater for us offering resale of privately owned materials to anyone else. That would require a change of legislation. We have pursued this in the past on a few occasions, and that is the stumbling block at this point. That said, you are right, there's tremendous value in some of the stuff that is on this property, and that's why our recommendation this evening is to afford the current owner the opportunity to come through as he has suggested he will starting tomorrow. If he does, we will not take the necessary action. If he doesn't, then we want to be ready to take the action as required.
Thank you. Councillor Ogden.
Do we know that this was properly insured, or is that still questionable?
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, we have been in contact with the owner. We do know that the property is insured.
Properly?
Correct.
Okay. And to the city manager, when you say we've tried to change bylaws, is that with the province of New Brunswick?
What I said, Councillor, is that the legislation does not permit us to offer things that are owned privately to other private entities. as part of this process.
What would it take to change those bylaws?
Again, Councillor, for this evening, Your Worship, through you to the
Yes.
Councillor, I think that's out of scope and worth perhaps another discussion in Growth Committee about that particular issue.
Okay, could I refer that to Growth Committee then?
We'll deal with it at Growth Committee. I don't think we need a formal motion for it, but we will address it there.
Thank you.
Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. This particular site it saddens me. I mean, I'm totally 100% behind, doing something there, absolutely. It saddens me because I was involved with the idea of putting 4 buildings in there, and having mixed market and affordable. When, is the expectation, and I hope that he does it, to just tear down what needs to be torn down and then resume construction and finish that 3 or 4 building project? Because if we do it, I'm sorry, Ben, but if we do it, it all comes down, correct?
Through your worship to the councillor, they have expressed intent to redevelop the property after the remedial work is done, and that is correct. If we were to move forward, we would need to take all the materials and foundation, everything, in order to fully remediate the hazard.
Including the foundation?
Including.
Okay, well, I really hope that he learned a lesson here and he gets it done. So we're giving him till tomorrow to get started, and how long?
Through your worship to the councillor, our competitive bidding process could take upwards of 2 weeks to complete, so we'll allow them to take action as that process is ongoing.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Mayor. This one has been really bothering me. So I appreciate all of staff's time. What I'd like to say is that I do, obviously when we have dilapidated buildings, it's unfortunate that owners are not taking ownership and doing whatever needs to be done with them. When you buy property, you're supposed to look after your property from start to finish. And when you look at a developer, multi-million-dollar company like Viva Development, if there's any issues with insurance, then I would hope that they would step up to the plate and pay for it out of their own pocket to demolish this instead of using staff time. Now, with that said, of course, I do know that costs for demolition could go off to the province, still taxpayers' money, but coming from a different pocket. But we can't recoup staff's time. What I would like to see is us being able to utilize staff in other ways. However, with that said, I do want to say that, certainly I have to support this because I certainly don't want to have anybody get hurt over there. And anyway, I really appreciate all the time that you've put in. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have been on this file.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just very quickly, I'll do what you always used to do when you were in the seat as Councillor for Ward 3. This was Viva Developments. This is an incredible waste of resources of the staff. It's incredibly important that we hope that these community players step up and look after their buildings and care about our communities and respect their investments.
Thank you, Councillor. Agree. Okay, so there are no more questions, and before I get a motion, I need to read this so everything's kosher. The information which has been provided in the council kit includes the report of the building inspector stating that the building located at 134 Taylor Avenue, PID 000-46375, is a hazard to the safety of the public by virtue of its being, amongst other things, dilapidated or structurally unsound. Is there present an owner, including anyone holding any encumbrance upon this property, who wishes to present evidence to the contrary, i.e., that the building is in fact structurally sound and not dilapidated? All right, so hearing no one, I will ask for a motion, and I'll read the motion. Resolved that the building located at 134 Taylor Avenue, PID 000-43675, is to be demolished as it has become a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of dilapidation, and be it further resolved that the building located at 134 Taylor Avenue is to be demolished as it has become a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of unsoundness of structural strength, And be it further resolved that one or more bylaw enforcement officers appointed and designated under the St. John Unsightly Premises and Dangerous Buildings and Structures bylaw are hereby authorized to arrange for the demolition in accordance with the with the applicable city purchasing policies. So I will take a mover and a seconder on that. Councillor Killen or Councillor Hickey and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ben. Next item.
Your worship, next on the agenda is item 15.1. It's a letter from the St. John Board of Police Commissioners with respect to election of officers. It's a recommendation to receive it for information.
Okay, you have a 15.1. Hang on for 1 second. So we have a letter from the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, the election officers, and Tamara Kelly has been elected as the chair. The vice chair is Kaylin Dean, and the secretary is Micah White. So I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is a citizen letter with respect to council transit representative mandated obligations. Recommendation is to refer to city manager.
Letters in your kit, refer to city manager. Councillor Killen? Oh, sorry, I have a question here. Oh, that's fine. I can take a seconder on that motion in the meantime. All right, Councillor Ogden. So I've got a couple of questions. Councillor Radwan, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question. I mean, since this is about a council transit representative, I'm just wondering if it maybe should be referred to nominating. I don't know. It just sounds more of a governing issue.
Well, I suspect it's me she's talking about.
Oh.
I'm assuming.
I tried to look up and see female on, but I didn't, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have Councillor Harris, you're up next.
I guess what I'm wondering is why are we referring this to city manager? A lot of these correspondences we receive for information. So what was the thinking around? Because it does seem a little bit off cuff and out of call, what I mean? It doesn't seem appropriate to me. So I'm just curious as to what the thinking was behind that.
Yeah, city manager, I'll let you answer.
Your worship, through you to the council, and I believe I can address both observations at the same time. So we have an MSA, a managerial service agreement with the Transit Commission right now to conduct all of their daily operations and to develop the strategies and plans moving forward for the commission's approval. One of those key items is transit redesign, which we are doing an inordinate amount of work on. And as part of the transit redesign, it is not only transit on demand, it's also harmonizing and streamlining routes. It's also greening the fleet. There's a variety of different parts to it. Although this has been briefed to council for information and council has expressed their support in principle for all of this, final decisions have not yet been made. If final decisions had been made, then quite frankly, this letter probably would not even be in the kit. But because final decisions have not yet been made and the staff is still working on this, it is appropriate for us to receive this. And because we are still working on it, it is appropriate to refer to the city manager. I will in turn refer to those who are doing the transit redesign for their consideration. This does not suggest at all that we are taking action on this, but because we are still working the issue, it is appropriate to refer to us for consideration on the issue that we are working on. Thank you.
All right, so I have a mover, I think, on that, don't I? You moved it. I'll take a seconder on it. Councillor Sullivan, on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item. Oh, Councillor Killen has a conflict on the next two, I believe.
Your worship, we have the three items that were forwarded from committee of the whole. So the first one of those items is 17.1. It's a city market lease renewal with the Butcher's Daughter gift shop, and the resolution would be resolved that city renew the lease for stall A and ancillary spaces in the city market with Butcher's Daughter Gift Shop under the terms and conditions as set out in the lease submitted with MNC 2022-144, and further be it resolved that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any necessary documents.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll take a mover and a seconder on that one. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Sullivan. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly say, I'm just going to say it once, this is both for 17.1 and 17.2. I will be voting opposed to this, and I do want to make it very clear, I love the two businesses in the city market, Butcher's Daughter and Howard's. It's incredible that somebody's been in the market for over 50 years. I'm not voting against this, not wanting to support these businesses. I certainly personally even have. I know that we're going through a strat plan for the city market, but I think it's I'm trying to put some urgency on getting leases changed. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I will counter that with the public to say that we are using the lease that we have been using. And when we go through the strat plan, we will look at that lease, and there's no evidence that it does need to be changed, but we will certainly find out then. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Radwan? Motion carried. Next item.
Next, Your Worship, is item 17.2, coming from Committee of the Whole. This is a city market lease renewal with Howard's Convenience. The motion would be resolved that the city renew the lease for stall D1 and ancillary spaces in the city market with De Leon Lee, operating under the registered business name Howard's Convenience, under the terms and conditions as set out in the lease submitted with MNC 2022-145, and further be it resolved that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any necessary documents.
Thank you. So I'll take a motion for that. Councillor Stewart and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Radwan's opposed. Motion carried. Thank you. Next item.
And the final item, Your Worship, I'm not sure if Councillor Killen will be coming back.
Oh, sorry, yeah, we've got to get Councillor Killen back in here.
Your Worship, the final item on the agenda was a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to professional services agreement for strategic governance training for council. And the resolution is that the city enter into the professional services agreement, generally in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting of May 2nd, 2022, with Strategic Governance Consulting Services Limited for the purpose of providing strategic governance training for council members, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement.
Okay, thank you, City Clerk. So I'll take a motion for that. Councillor Sullivan and then deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And I guess is that it for us for the evening? Okay, so I am going to call for a motion to adjourn. And just remember, everyone, I think I've said this before, you can't live in Rome and fight with the Pope, so it's good. It's my old grandmother's saying, and it's something that I've lived by for a lot of years. Anyway, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.